Okay, so this is part 2 of me doing sort of how-to videos for my presentations, screen share, Ecamm profiles from the Sellify store. If you haven't watched part 1, stop now, go back and watch part 1, because it's just me filling in a few little bits and pieces that I missed from part 1 and then adding in a couple of slightly more advanced elements as well. So the first element I mentioned in part 1 briefly was tweaking names. If where it says Martin, you go down and double click on Martin, edit the text and put in a much longer or a much shorter name, you may find that it doesn't sit nicely in the box in terms of fitment. So in that case, if that does happen, what you're going to have to do is go into the profile and under the host, if it's the host name that's not sitting properly, unlock the text for the host and then move it back to where you want it to be and then lock it. And you'll find that they're labeled guest 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. So it should be very easy to find which bit of text you need to change. But that's just if you have to tweak the names, because there's a restriction in the size of the box that they're currently sitting in, and it might mean that the text suddenly shrinks down or something if you had a very long name in, so you might need to resize the box, etc. But remember, just unlock it, move it around to where you want it, and then re-lock it afterwards. Other elements that I was going to mention is guest video. So let's have a quick look at guest video and in fact Zoom gallery at the same time. So I'd mentioned really that what you can also do as well as bring yourself in this kind of format with everybody in interview mode, so everyone around the edges in interview mode. You could also bring in yourself, instead of in interview mode, as live in Keynote. So both Keynote and PowerPoint now support live video, and you can drop yourself into a deck and it will work just the same as anything else you would expect to in Ecamm. So it's very, very similar. All you're doing is putting your live video into a circle or into a different shape. So if I have another look at another one, I could be appearing very large and these could be all of my guests around me. So a couple of little things to note here. My image is coming through on my standard camera into Keynote. It's exactly the same camera that I'm using potentially for all of these images around the edge, but it doesn't have the Ecamm tweaks in the camera effects, so it looks a bit dull and grey. So you'll need to make sure that your camera's looking super smart without any Ecamm tweaks if you're going to be doing this, because otherwise you'll look a bit grey when compared with everybody else who's coming in looking wonderful. But that's all to do with your cameras, so have a play about with that. The other thing to note was this is really a nod to the forthcoming Zoom features, which we don't know anything about at the moment other than that they're coming. So if you were going to do this all in interview mode, which is super possible at the moment, you could bring in all of these guests in interview mode and have you sitting on the slide deck as well. Be aware that it all uses up tons of bandwidth. So if you haven't got a super Mac, or you haven't got ultimate internet speeds, then don't try it. Also, if you invite a whole load of guests who've never been on anything like this before into a Chrome window to do screen share with interview mode, they're probably going to all be very confused. So I would tend to say, save this for just a few guests who know what they're doing with Ecamm and are used to appearing in interview mode, then you'll be golden. But if you're going to do it for a larger audience who are not experienced in that way, then don't do it, because you'll have all sorts of problems with them forgetting to put headphones on and all slap back and things like that. It will be a nightmare. So don't do this if you're going to be working with an audience that's not used to streaming and appearing on streams. So that was just a thought on that particular element. I'll have a look at transitions in a moment as well, but I may as well also flick down to something that I didn't cover in the first video, which was basically, rather than having a screen share, having a widget share. So with the widget share screens, which are all set up for you, you'll notice that I've matched my background here to be white, and I've changed the colouring to be yellow around the edge, and I might want to change the border frame for that as well. So why don't I just do that while I'm in here? So, because that one doesn't look right. Let's bring back in the colour block, and we'll change the colour of the colour block as well, I think. So I'm going to colour match that element simply by clicking on the element and choosing a bit different color. If I can find where I put my color frames. There you go. That one's a bit better, isn't it? So basically I can color match everything, and all you're doing with the widget is cut and pasting in the website that the widget is on, and then you'll find that just like with Ecamm in general, I'm not teaching you how to use Ecamm, much better people teach you how to use Ecamm, but you can switch on your widget and you can come on and you can interact with elements on the screen in the way that you would normally do with a website. So it really is a very powerful tool. The only thing to note about widgets is there are some Java elements and other things that don't play well with widgets, but just go check that out before you go play with it when you're using the profile. But I've intentionally made this widget very tall and long, so it's much nicer feel than it would normally be if you just accept the normal sort of 720 by 1080 or something like that band of what you would normally see with a widget share. So this is a much nicer look and feel for that widget share, and as I say, you can just go color match all your backgrounds in for that as well. The other one I was going to mention is transitions and how you play with transitions. So let's just go back to this screen share here, and I'll go up a couple of slides I think on my deck, because you don't want to see me in duplicate, but actually that's a good example of looking at the difference between my camera and the Ecamm version with the tweaks on it. You can see it's much duller when I'm appearing in the screen share version in Keynote Live. But let's just go up a couple of decks. Let's just take that one. What I'm going to do now is go into live demo mode, and we'll have a play about, because I'm going to add in a transition here as well. So live demo mode, not normally my favorite thing, but we'll try it anyway to show you what's going on. So into live demo mode, turning on live demo mode, looking for the control key to zoom in so that you can see here where all of the transitions are. So copy of transition, copy of transition, copy of transition, and a transition for editing. So what are they all about? So if I take a copy of that transition there, I'm just going to zoom back out again so you can see where this is going to go. All this is a transition between two different screens. So I'm going to grab that, I'm going to move it between host solo and full screen share. If I then come back up to host solo, excuse me, and then I run the transition, it does something like this. So just a gentle transition into my next scene, which is cool. If I change the background, it will also bring in the background. So if I change the background to something else, it will bring in the background, but let me change it to one that you're going to see more readily. And I run that transition again. So I'm just going to go back up to my scene of me solo and run the transition again. You'll see it goes through the background there for the transition and onto my next scene, which is all very nice. But what I also potentially might want to do is add something into that transition. So there's one down the bottom called transition for editing. So if I come into transition for editing, it's got a little bit of text in the middle, so I can change that text if I want that as part of my transition, or I could add a logo or something along those lines. But what I'm going to do here first of all is just make a duplicate copy of that, and that's because this timer has all been set up for you. And if I just grab one of these ones and drop it in where I want it to, in fact I'll move this one back out of the way again because I'm going to keep that there, then what will happen is that the transition will run straightway smoothly with this timer in the background. But what you need to do once you've made an edit to this, so text on my next slide, that's what I want in this case, is to come down to the countdown timer and edit the countdown timer. This is just to make the countdown timer invisible. Now that's jumped off my screen, but what I'm going to do here is try and drag it back on, and hopefully you'll see it. So hopefully you're now seeing that. It's jumped up to my second monitor there. But I want to change the text color there, which is also jumped onto the second monitor. Come back down here. And I want to reduce the opacity on that text to 0, so it's invisible. And I want to click go to next scene when finished. And then as soon as I click save, then that one will be my finished version, and I'm going to take that then and drop it between the two. If I'm quick. So now if I come up to host solo and look at host solo, I have changed that transition slightly. So this time when I go into the transition, it's brought my text on for me as well, but it's moved me nicely into the next scene. So all I have done there is drag and drop a transition between two different elements, and I could drag and drop that anywhere I wanted to between two different elements. So we may as well have a look at that. If I come back to my host solo and I come out of live demo mode, then I'm now full screen with a bit of luck, and when I go into my transition, we're going to get my text for the next slide sort of appearing as a little intro into the next slide. So simple as that, nothing complicated, but it could be a nice way of moving between scenes. So that's all I wanted to play about with that version. May come back and have a look at mini decks in a minute, but we'll see. That's another 11-minute recording, and I think I'm about to cough. So cheerio for the moment. See you later. Bye.